right. Good morning, everyone. It is January 30th, 2025, and this is another episode of Oracle Apex Office Hours. I'm your host today, Jason Haynes. I'm a product manager for Oracle Apex. Today, we're going to be covering what's new in Apex 24.2, but this is part 3 of a 4-part series. The other parts that were recorded, they'll be available soon, and you'll be able to re-review any of that content that you missed if you were not on the call, or if you want to review it again and learn more about it. But today with part 3, we've got a lot of great stuff coming up. We have some announcements and updates first. So we have a bunch of Oracle Apex blog posts specifically because of Apex 24.2's release to general availability. If you want to learn how to create a data model using AI, if you want to enhance Oracle Fusion application integrations, if you want to look at database object dependencies and so much more, we have a blog for it. And it's great learning also. It gives you an opportunity to work at your own pace and learn how some of the examples presented in the blogs come together and how you can use it to improve your experience as a developer using Oracle Apex. So you can find more information there at blogs.oracle.com/apex. So in this 4-part series, we've already covered number 1 and number 2. Today it will be part 3 with workflow and human task enhancements, document generator service integration enhancements, template component grouped headers and faceted search enhancements, and then delivered Apex ideas. Next time, we're going to see JSON sources and a little bit more about that later. So we have upcoming in-person conferences. That's why I'm coming to you live here from Austin, Texas. We're going to Oracle headquarters tomorrow to present a boot camp in person to almost 100 attendees. It's going to be really exciting. We can't wait. A few of the team members are joining me from where they're from across North America. In addition to that, we have Oracle Database 23 AI and Apex Iberian Tour. And you can see this in Barcelona, Madrid, Lisbon, and Malaga. So for more information, you can see the respective links there. But in general, you can always go to apex.oracle.com/go/events to learn more about these other events. We try to get a lot of these events up on that events website and that content updated as we learn about them. So you can always find the latest information there, and you can also enable push notifications. So when a new event is published, you are notified. In addition, we have Apex World 2025 in the Netherlands. Thank you so much, Monica, for putting that little tidbit in there for me. And that's happening in March. And then we have the Apex Alpe Adria event, which is happening in Croatia in April. So get ready to book your travel, book your hotels, and maybe even make sure you've got a call for paper submitted if there's still time remaining. It'd be great to have the community keep on growing and have you bring your knowledge and experience in any form that you can with your session ideas. So remember, here on these Zooms and office hours for Apex, if you have any questions at all, please make them relevant to the content we're presenting today. We have many people as panelists on the call today that will answer your questions. Do not use the chat for general questions. Use the Q&A button. That way we have a chance to review them and answer them one at a time because it gets lost in the chat as people are chatting. If your question requires a deeper understanding of whatever your content is, it's always best to create a new forum post at apex.oracle.com/forum. That way we have a chance to do this offline, maybe get more involved and have more eyes on the issue. Especially, it gives the opportunity of the community to participate in any of the answers. So in this 4-part series we see coming up, we've already covered some of this information, but yes, we have more about the JSON sources and building components directly on JSON columns, the JSON collection tables, and the JSON relational duality views coming up, and that will be next week. So stay tuned for even more of that. And when all of this is done, we'll have those 4-part series videos available on our YouTube channel. But today's speakers, we've got Menno, we've got Ronny, and we've got Ananya and Vincent. And they're going to be presenting in this order about their various topics. So let me introduce for the document generator service integration enhancements, Menno, to speak on his content. Welcome, Menno.
Thank you, Jason. So if you're not sure what document generator is, it's a function that runs on OCI. And we integrated it with Apex in Apex 24.1. And basically what it does is it takes your Office template that you developed, and then the function can combine that with JSON data and generate a PDF output for you. So this document generator team has added support now also for Excel. That was added last September. And that means you can create your own Excel templates and use those. So we enabled that in Apex. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I'm just going to show you what it means and how a template should look like and give you an idea of what's possible. So basically your template, if you create an Excel template, it needs to include these special tags. And the document generator will replace them with the actual data from your JSON. And you can all read all about it here in the documentation. So I've created here the most basic example where basically I have a table for my employees and I'm looping over each row of a JSON array. The array name is employees and printing out the e-name, job, manager, so on and so forth. And then I'm closing it. And it's fine if you use multiple worksheets. So here you see I have employees, but I also have a worksheet for departments. I could even say I want the departments below. That could work as well. But in this case, I thought, let's use a new worksheet. So this is my template. That was pretty simple. If I go back to my Apex instance, I have here already an application ready. You go to your shared components. You go to report layouts. You click the create wizard. You give it a name. Could be amp depth, for example. And then it asks you for the file. So you can choose that employees departments example and create the layout. The second thing you need to do is specify a data source for this layout. And I have defined one already. It's the employees and data, employees and departments. And basically it's based on two tables, the emp and the dep table. Next, I need to specify the report layout that I've just uploaded. The output format is already set to Excel, so that's okay. Let's apply these changes. And then to show you that that really works is when I test this report, it will invoke document generator and print out for me my nice employees report. So I see all my employees, and on the second worksheet, I see all the departments. Now, what you can do with this is basically up to you. You can create really nice, good-looking Excel workbooks. And I have another example actually to show you that. So in my application builder, I will switch to my other app, which is called My Budget. And this is an app that I've created for demo purposes only to manage my personal finances, my monthly budget, what are my expenses, what is my income. So per month, I can click on the month. I can enter different expenses. For instance, this January, I have a birthday that will cost me a little bit of money, and I have my income. You know, every month can be something else. In August, I might be doing an Atlantic cruise, and I'm gonna spend more money. But the basic point is that this is the Apex application, and now I can easily convert all that data to Excel. So I print the Excel button, and there you see it. I see all my monthly expenses for January. I see the total expenses, the income, and what my actual balance was that month. And the same applies for each of the other months. So I think that's a really nice new feature that you can now use Excel templates using document generator. And that's all I have. So over to you, Jason.
That's pretty cool, Menno. Thank you so much. So that was Menno, and he was speaking about the document generator service integration enhancements. Thank you very much. And next up, we have Ronny to speak about template component grouped headers and the faceted search enhancements. Your turn up, Ronny. Go ahead. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, hello and welcome also from my side. As Jason said, I want to talk about new features in faceted search and template components. And yeah, I prepared an example for you with my public photos. And as you can see, we see on the left side here a faceted search. We are in Apex 24.1. And we see on the right side or in the middle of the screen a template component report with photos, and we see details like the aperture, the ISO, the shutter speed, and the focal length, the camera that is used, the lens, and all that stuff. And yeah, when we now want to filter here on the left side, We can easily filter by ear or by the lens, and then the filter gets filtered. The report gets filtered. Now, when we want to have more facets, then we get into trouble with the current screen resolution because we need to scroll when we activate more filters. So, for example, when I activate also the ISO and also activate the aperture, then this scroll bar gets longer and longer. And currently in the old Apex version, yes, we could have this more filter button and we could hide these facets. We could also collapse them so that they do not directly appear in full height. But what was not possible was to get a quick access to many of facets. And when we now switch over to Apex 24.2, so you think I will export my app and import this app in Apex 24.2, we will get another view. So this more filters button is gone away. And we see here next to this search field another button, and that is called the Add Filter dialog. So my more filter facets from Apex 24.1 are now transformed into this Add Filter dialog. And the good thing is of this Add Filter dialog, I don't have here such a large scrolling field. I can here put in my facets and a very large number of facets to very fastly filter different facets. For example, when I want to filter by ISO, then I can easily activate the ISO and it is shown in my current facets. When I want to edit this facet, then I just click here on the label and then I can remove just one, or I click on this and then it's also removed. This dialog is really just for adding a filter. So when we, for example, again, filter some apertures, then this aperture you will not find again here in the menu. You only will find it there when you have no current facets. But when you have current facets, as I said, just click on the label and you can directly change your filter. Another problem that we, or maybe not a problem, but a time-consuming issue, let's call it like this, was when we have an existing page in faceted search and we want to add new facets. When we take a look at region columns, then we can easily click on the synchronize column button, and then all new columns that are not listed here are added automatically in the page designer. For facets, you could not do such things. So when you would need, when you wanted to create a new facet, you have to type in the facet name, for example, shutter speed. Then you needed to add a label. You need to set a list of values, and you need also to set the database column. Sometimes it's added automatically correctly from the page designer, but not always. And you have to set manually the data type. And when we now go to Apex 24.2, maybe we can create just a new page. To give you a good example, when we have only one facet, we create a faceted search page. Let's call it test facets. Then we select a table. No, I don't want. Then we select a table like, for example, the EMP table. We create next. Let's just really pick one facet. We let report there, or maybe two. Now we create the page. Then we got here our report with our columns. And as you can see, this is a region where columns have also a heading. They have not just a column name, they have also a heading, because there are some regions like cards or maybe the charts or the map where you have the columns, but you don't have headings. But what you can now do is we click here on the right side, we just click on synchronize facets, and all the facets that are not there are added automatically by the information of the columns of the report. So we can see here now the employee, there's automatically the facet name set, the label is set. As type, we always edit it as input field, but when you want to change this very fast, you can easily click, for example, control, and then you can easily set here for multiple facets the input field. But at the beginning, we set it as input field. The good thing is that also the type is automatically set when it's supported from the region. So for example, when you have a classic report, then everything is varchar. But when we do this, for example, on a template component report, maybe I switch back to my first page. When we do this here on the template component report, then we can see it really loads also the data types. And then you don't have to care if it's a date, a number, or whatever. Yeah. The same does work for smart filters. So when we switch to a page with smart filters, then you can do exactly the same. You have here also this button, synchronize filters, and then you get all the new columns automatically added by the page designer, and then you can easily change to the facets or whatever you want. Yeah. Now, what's new in template components? As you can see, we have here in 24.1 our template component report. And when we think about interactive grid or interactive report and also classic report, then we could activate control breaks or grouping. The problem is that it's not possible with Apex in 24.1. So when you take a look into your template component plugin, you cannot add any definition for groups. But in 24.2, you can. We added the group support in 24.2 for template components. And I have here an example with the content row report. And the content row report is the first default template component that brings you directly this grouping feature. So how do we use this grouping feature? We have here our template component region. Now let's say we want to have a grouping on the lens. We click on the column lens, and then we easily activate groups. Now the page designer shows us some small error. The first thing that we need to check is when we use grouping, then we have a correct order by, because it makes no sense, for example, to order by the ISO and the aperture when we want to group by lens. Then you maybe get a misleading result. When there is no order by in the report, then we initially set an order by, in this case to a static value, order by lens. And because we are working with template components, we have to add a label for the grouping, so a title and an icon or so. So yeah, let's just add this. I prepared something here. Well, and now we can also add here an icon because our template is supporting that. And when we now run the page, let's just save it. And when we now run the page, we get a grouping by our lens. And the good thing is that you can completely control in template components how groups are looking. This is what we bring in with the universal theme in Apex 24.2. This is the grouping template from the content row. And that's at the moment the only template component region that really supports grouping from the template. You can create groups in your own plugins. You can also adapt. Other universal theme template component regions that they support regions. What do you need to do? We go into shared components, into plugins. Then we have our template component plugins. And when we take a look at these templates, then we got with older Apex the partial template. We got the report row template, the report body template, And now we also got this report group template. And when you have a report group template, then you can activate grouping for your template component plugins. And as you can see, you can add everything you want here. Every template, for example, when we want to have different colors for the different background colors for the group headers, then you can easily change this. What's also possible is that you have multiple groupings. So let's go back to the page designer. And now let's add also for the camera grouping. So what happens now? The first thing is the page designer warns us because we need to change the order. What we don't want is to destroy your order. When you say, hey, it's okay, I want this order, you can easily save the page, but in general, you should change the order that you already set. And so that's what we do. We add here the camera. And the next thing we do is we add also the camera to our grouping sets. In my example, I already did that. So when we now group by camera and lens, as you can see, we see here the camera grouping and also the lens grouping. And you can add there as much or so many columns you want. One thing I have to say, in the past, grouping, and this is something I want to tell you due to accessibility reasons. In the past, grouping was implemented like this. When you have, for example, an unordered list rendered, for example, in the cards region or so, then the grouping was really just a list entry. But with template components, we really create sublists. So when you use a screen reader or so, it is much easier for screen readers to read because it's really stacked and not just rendered as a single list entry. Yeah, that's all I have to say about the new features. I hope that you will use them as fast as you can. And now let's go back to Jason.
Thank you, Ronnie. Fantastic set of new features. This is very exciting. I can't wait to experiment with them myself. That session of content was from Ronnie. He was talking about template component grouped headers and faceted search enhancements. Up next, we have workflow and human task enhancements presented by Ananya. Over to you, Ananya.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Hello, everyone. I am Ananya Chatterjee, and I will be talking about enhancements in the area of workflow and business process automation in Apex. For those of you who have not yet explored workflow in Apex as well as human tasks in Apex, it would be great if you could look at a few of the blogs that were posted as soon as Apex Workflow got released as part of our 23.2 release. And you will find introduction and background of Apex Workflow in the currently released blogs for the workflow enhancements in 24.2, which I'm currently sharing with you here on the screen. And these are the links for the very first time workflow was introduced in Apex. So I would encourage everybody to go through these links and try the blogs, whatever steps are mentioned in the blogs yourselves, to get an idea of what Apex Workflow is about and how to automate your business processes using Apex. In addition to that, there's a great news for everybody. The Oracle Apex Developer Professional course now has a separate module number 21 to be precise, which is dedicated to workflow with 125 hours of course material, including lectures and demos. It is highly recommended that you try it out yourself. In addition to that, we also have the Workflow Live Lab, which is a workshop which takes you step by step through the entire process of setting up and modeling your workflow, as well as the new enhancements which were made in 24.2, which is also included in the Live Lab. So I would encourage you all to try it out and give us your feedback. So with that, I will talk about the enhancements that we did. 2 or 3 of the major enhancements that we did, thanks to the ideas that the community has posted, and we tried to incorporate them. So to begin with, I will talk about invoking a workflow from another workflow. So Before this, we did not have a way to declaratively invoke a workflow from another workflow. So what I have here is the sample approval workflow and tasks application that you can download from the gallery. My enhancement that I have built here for the demo is on top of this particular application. So let me go to shared components and then workflows and automations. And in workflows, I will talk about the laptop request workflow that you will already see in your gallery app. So the laptop request approval workflow actually requests a laptop for an employee. So the requester goes on behalf of an employee, requests for a laptop, and it goes through an approval process. So far, so good. So what I have enhanced here is that I have added a separate process called invoke budget approval process. And this process is supposed to go and check if there is enough budget allocated to this particular employee for this particular item. And this budget approval process is a generic process that could be used for that employee for other purpose as well, for expense reimbursement, for travel expenses, all kind of stuff that involves any kind of cost and budget allocation. So in such cases, a separate process, having a separate reusable process makes a lot of sense. First of all, it reduces redundancy in your business process, makes it easier to manage. And of course, the aspect of reusability is there. So let us look at how we can add a new workflow or invoke a workflow from our existing workflow. Let me zoom this in a bit for you to understand. So this is here is the invoke budget approval process that you see here, right? And this is the new activity, the invoke workflow activity that you can drag and drop. And that's how this was built, to be precise. So let me go into this process to see what it does. There is an easy way you can do that through the diagram builder, which is this pane basically. So on the context menu entry, you will see a new entry called open. When you click on open, it will open it for you, the child workflow or the invoked workflow as we call it. So you see here, it's pretty simple. It just gets the budget of the item based on some table. And then it checks, there's a switch activity here, which checks whether the budget has been exceeded. In that case, it is straight away, the status is set to rejected. Otherwise, it goes through an approval process. If it's approved, then the status is approved. And if you see here in the parameters section, these are the parameters of this workflow. So previous to 24.2, we only accepted input parameters. We did not have a way to specify a direction for a parameter. But now with 24.2, we do have an out parameter or in-out parameters. Both of them are supported. And this is how basically the result of an invoked workflow can be sent back to the parent workflow. So employee ID here is an input, of course, to this workflow. Item is also an input, but status here is an output. So status is what will be sent back to the parent workflow at the end of or at the completion of this workflow. This is a helpful back button that you will see in your toolbar region, which can help you navigate back straight away to the parent workflow from which this workflow was getting invoked. So let us go here and just expand this in the tree region. Let me scroll it up a little so that we can see how the parameters are mapped. So if you see here, the status is of our particular interest here. It has a direction of out, and it is mapped to an existing workflow variable of the parent workflow, that is the laptop request workflow. So it is mapped to the vtask outcome. Let us keep this in mind, and let us also look at a few of the settings of the invoke workflow activity. First of all, of course, we will need to select the particular workflow which we are trying to invoke here. We have the initiator item. If we want the initiator of the child workflow to be a different one, we have an interesting property here called wait for completion, which by default is set to true. When wait for completion is true, it means that the parent workflow will wait until the invoked workflow has been completed. And this is usually the case for all our business problems. But you might want to use a workflow that you just want to call and forget about, and you want to proceed and progress with your parent workflow, irrespective of the consequence, when you're not interested in the consequence. So we generally call that fire and forget, basically. So that option is also there. So you just need to switch this off. So let us now go and look at the how it all works at runtime. So I am logged in here as Steve. This is the running application. I'm in the employee page, and I'm trying to request a new laptop for Alan. So I have submitted the request, and let's look at the initiated workflows over here. This is the workflow console generated page, and I see there is a request that has been raised, and this is the workflow for that, and it is waiting here. It's not even come to the invoked workflow basically. So let me log in as Jane, who I know is the approver, which I can actually see from my requests here. This is the unified task list I'm talking about. This is assigned to Jane. So let me log in as Jane. I log in as Jane and I go to my tasks. I see the task here and I will approve it. So now that this is approved, I will switch user and I will go back to Steve just to see where my workflow is right now. So going back here to initiated workflows, interesting, there is a new workflow that I can see here. This is the instance of the invoked workflow, basically the budget approval workflow. But I will look at the details of the parent workflow to see where it exactly is. So if you see here in the workflow diagram, you see that it's waiting here. But I would like to know where exactly it is waiting, right from the parent workflow details. So one enhancement that has been done in the generated workflow details page, you'll have to regenerate the workflow details page, of course, for that. If you click here on the activity, it will open up the details of the invoked workflow for you to see exactly at what point in the invoked workflow it is waiting. So it is waiting for approval. So the cost was not greater than the budget. So it is going through an approval. It has not been rejected yet. And we have a very helpful to parent workflow button to help you there. So let me see who is now supposed to approve this budget. So it is assigned to Bo, which is very helpful to know. So I will log in as Bo here. And once I've logged in, I can go to my tasks and I can approve this. I have approved it. So now I will go and switch user and go back as Steve and check whether my workflow progressed or not. So I can see that the budget approval is already completed and the parent workflow details will also show me the same thing. So you see that the budget approved, invoke budget approval has been completed and it's now waiting for confirmed delivery. So this was a very brief glimpse into what you can do with invoking workflows for your business process automation. Quickly shifting focus to another useful enhancement that we made for our workflows. This is prior to 24.2, we had no way of copying workflow from a different application. We could, of course, use the duplicate feature within the workflow designer for copying or creating duplicates of workflows in the existing application, but not from another application. So for that, let me show you another application, in fact, where we have less number of workflows so that we can copy over. So this is another application that I will shortly show you. Going to the copy from other app, you can choose the application you want to copy from. Let me choose this one. And you can choose the workflow you want to copy. If I choose the laptop request, and let me choose that actually. When I do this and click on copy workflow, not only will it copy the laptop approval workflow, but it will also copy the invoked workflow, which is very helpful because workflow, as you know, involves referencing several shared components, right? Like the human tasks, REST data sources, email templates. And now with the addition of invoked workflow, you also have another workflow that it can carry back. So this was copying workflow from another application. The third and the last important feature I want to talk about, thanks again, a huge thanks to the contributor of this idea. This really makes our workflow very robust. That is the ability to resume a workflow instance that has been suspended from any arbitrary activity in the workflow. So for that, I will show you what I have here. I will talk about a workflow which is involving a requisition and order management. And it's a pretty simple workflow. So in such cases, you always see that there is a requisition that is generated. An approval happens for the requisition. Once approved, the order gets generated, and finally you have an approval task created for the order. So this is my requisition and order workflow. So it's exactly what I talked about. Interesting thing to note here is that there is an auto approval feature inbuilt into this workflow, so that if the requisition amount is less than 1,000, then there will be no approval required for the requisition to be approved. Let's make a note of that mentally. So now I go to the runtime aspect of this. This is my requisitions and orders table. So I am going here and I am requesting for an executive dinner, right? So as you can see here, it is showing item amount 1,200. So I know mentally that this will require an approval, right, for the requisition. So I am requesting it. It's gone here. Let me look at my admin workflow. So I am, for the ease of explaining, I am the administrator also here, because as you know, a workflow administrator has the capability to suspend and resume workflows, right? So this is my executive dinner one. And as expected, it is waiting for approval of the requisition. And the workflow diagram also shows the same. But you know what? I just realized that no, actually, it's not going to cost that much, and this approval was totally not required. Prior to 24.2, we would have to actually terminate this instance and restart the whole business. But as an admin, what I can do now, I can suspend this workflow. What suspending does is it actually helps me to be able to edit this workflow variable amount. So I will, in a very smart way, make it less than 1,000. So I will make it like 999, apply the changes. So far, no magic will happen, of course, because as you know that only the variable has been updated so far, nothing else, right? So let me quickly, I actually have to now resume the workflow, right? Prior to 24.2, resuming would have resumed it from the particular activity where the workflow was paused or suspended. But now I will try to resume it from here, from the very first activity, so that I have the chance of going via the auto approval route. So how do I do that? I choose the activity from here. Let me remove this so that it's easier to understand. So I will choose the activity as this one, update requisition status in review, which you can see is the first activity here. So I choose this as the activity. I can choose any activity here, right? And I click on resume. So once I've resumed it here, let's see where I go. What happens exactly? Yeah, workflow is resumed at where? Interesting. So the approved requisition where it was halting previous to the entire business of updating has been terminated and the workflow took a whole new route. If you see here, this was terminated and the workflow completely bypassed the approval process and it went here straight away through the create order. The history of this also shows that the workflow instance was altered and resumed at a different activity. What I showed you here was the ability to resume something that was previously occurring, but you can choose a future activity also. For example, you can choose this update order status to approved, and you can choose any activity and resume it from there. So this is a very powerful tool to use, and this also has been blogged about. I have blogged about this one and in a separate blog. I would encourage all of you to go through it, send feedback on how you find this new feature. And lastly, thank you all for your contributions to the ideas. Keep them coming. I'll pass it on to Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. That was amazing. I'm so impressed with what we've been able to put together in our product to offer workflow and business process automation. I'm proud to be a member of this team and see everyone present all their wonderful effort as it's come into the product. So that was workflow and human task enhancements from Ananya. Up next, we have Vincent, and he's going to talk about delivered Apex ideas in Apex 24.2. So over to you, Vincent.
Thank you, Jason. Okay. All right. So, hi, everybody. My name is Vincent. I'm responsible for the activities around the Apex Ideas app. And I think Apex 24.2 is a wonderful release. I think it has plenty of big, flashy features, but it also is filled with smaller, but also as impactful features And that's why today the goal of my session is to present you with the delivered ideas. So I want to do a rapid fire of about a dozen ideas that you have contributed to from the Apex Ideas app. So, of course, you should know this. If you're here and you haven't heard about the Apex Ideas app, we've done something wrong. In fact, I know we've done something wrong because I see the list and the number of participants in this very webinar, and I know that the activity on the Ideas app should be higher. So please go in, please read the ideas that people have, contribute with your own idea. You can enter your own ideas, you can vote on ideas, and you can also comment on people's ideas. This helps us be aware of what's important for you, the community. And the way we interact with the ideas ourselves is that we have this team, we call it the triage team, which is really a really solid group of very smart people. And we meet every single week and we go through each new idea. So we really take this process seriously. And all of your ideas are read, discussed, and even sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. We start discussing how this would be implemented. This is my favorite meeting of the week. We get to talk about what's important for you and what it might, what the impact would be for Apex. So I want to take a step back, just talk about what we did in 2024. So this app had an average of 15 new ideas per week. So that is sort of a good flow of new ideas because it allows us to read every single ones on our meetings. And it averages about 2,000 views per month. I would like to see this double in 2025. So please go in the Ideas app and contribute. Within a year, we were able to identify 88 ideas to put in the roadmap. That doesn't mean we're committing to any specific release. It just means that we think it's a good idea and we would like to see it action and we will work to prioritize it. In that same time frame, we were able to deliver 73 ideas. So you can already see that the ratio is not perfect here. We have some work to do, and I would like to see this change so that we can deliver more, or at least as much that we can put in the roadmap. But specifically for Apex 24.2, we've delivered 31 ideas. And today I'm going to talk about a dozen. But just to be clear, the number of ideas is not the only thing that matters, because some ideas are small and very simple to implement. So that inflates the numbers. Some ideas are way more complicated, but they're also more important. So the number is not the only thing that matters. It's the quality of the ideas and the developer experience that you get out of them. So the first one that I want to talk about was actually the most voted idea in the app as of 24.2, which is keeping the pagination and scroll position when you refresh the interactive report through a DA. So I'm crediting the author here of the idea because without you, this actually would not have happened. So this is what the idea looked like, the concept looked like before we implemented it. So you navigate through an interactive report, you click refresh, it triggers the DA, and then you're actually back to the first page of the pagination. So that's actually frustrating for the users because you're losing context, you're losing your position, and so on. So what we've done in Apex 24.2 is add a new attribute to the dynamic action level for the refresh. You can now maintain pagination. And as you save this and refresh your report and try the same behavior again, now you change the pagination, hit refresh, And you see that the data refreshes. Now nothing happened, but you're still on the same pagination and scroll position. So that's a simple switch declarative option, and it all works perfectly. The next idea is, there's a couple ideas related to Page Designer. The first one being displaying the page information for the HTML title. So thanks to Anthony for this. When you look and you think of Apex 24.1, and I know some of you do this, I see it all the time on screen sharing. You have a dozen or 50 different tabs open, and all you get to see is Page Designer. That does not provide any useful information for the page. So what are you editing? You start switching from one page to the one tab to the other. It not user-friendly. So what we've done in 24.2 is add page context information so that you can quickly retrieve your application and page that you're looking for. That's useful when you have multiple environments running or multiple apps. It just makes it easier for you to get your pages back. Similarly, we've added the same kind of information to the Page Designer breadcrumb. In 24.1, what you had is just Page Designer. Okay, we all know it's Page Designer, but what are we actually editing? So in 24.2, we've replaced this to actually provide the context of the page. So that goes hand in hand with the tab information. So thanks to Shelley for proposing this idea. Another one in Page Designer is that we've expanded the number field where you navigate between pages. So if you're one of those people that like to have, a billion pages in your app, well, it was not super user-friendly because the field would not expand and you could not see the actual page number that you're editing. So in 24.2, this number field is actually something that expands. So if you have a billion page, now you'll see the full page number completely. Thanks to Andreas for this idea. The next one is something a little more involved, and we're leaving Page Designer. It's about content security policy. And we've made strides toward compliance with CSP without unsafe inline. And the approach we've taken to do that is to inject a nonce through every single script tag that Apex generates at runtime. So what actually is a nonce? This is something I didn't know just about a year ago. A nonce is a unique number that's generated only once for a page request, and that creates this secure handshake between the page request and the scripts that are executed. So if you go to the Apex security attributes, you'll have access to this HTTP response headers field, in which you can put any number of HTTP response headers, but the one that we're interested in here is the content security policy. And if you wanted to have a match between the HTTP response headers script and what's generated from the page rendering, you would put a nonce value here. Now, of course, that doesn't really make sense if you're hard coding it, but in 24.2, you can use one of the substitution variable that will be generated once for each page request. So that means that if you have script tags that's enabled, that's rendered at runtime, the scripts will run if they have a nonce, but they will not run if they don't. So that adds a layer of security where you cannot have unsecured script tags running on your page. And in 24.2, that's enabled for all script tags, regardless of if you've enabled CSP or not. You don't have to comply with this, but now Apex generates the nonce. So we're looking at a page source right now, and if you look at any script tags, you will see that it always generates a new nonce for every page request. So that's something you have access through the page source, And you can also get that nonce using substitution variables and JavaScript environment variables. A smaller one and easier to understand is modal dialogues are now resizable via a declarative option. So this was something highly requested on the app. You could actually do this before by putting the attributes yourself and knowing a little bit of jQuery UI, but now it's a declarative option. You get it at the page level. You just enable it, save, and your modal dialogues are going to be resizable. If you had used the manual attributes before, they're automatically migrated, so you don't have to do anything with it. So thanks to Jarik for this idea. This next one is a new API function added to the Apex region package. So this is for people who want to get the region ID, the primary key of the region, based on either a DOM static ID or the region name. Two examples of this. The APIs are very similar. They're overloaded, right? So you could retrieve the region ID of your application end page by specifying the DOM static ID of your region, and you can do the same with the name. And then you have access to this region ID for other kind of operations you might want to do. So you no longer have to query the Apex dictionary or the views. It's all in here. You can just use the API now. The next idea, and thanks to Morten for the previous idea. That was a good one. This idea by Ron is about improving how the Apex page package deals with the get URL function and how to control the URL to be absolute or automatic. So let's take a step back and think how this used to work in 24.1 and before. So you have this get URL function, and the URL that it generates was always automatically it was automatically determined to be absolute or not. So for example, if you run this from a page context, it would generate a relative URL because you're already in the context of a page. If you want to move to another page, you only need the relative path. From an Apex automation, you want to send an email to somebody, you need the full URL. So before it would always be automatic. That could actually be a problem for people who want to use these APIs dynamically. So sometimes you always want the URL to be absolute. So now we've introduced this new parameter to the get URL function. So if it's false or you don't specify it, it goes back to the automatic behavior. But if it's true, then it will always generate an absolute URL. So it makes your code a little bit more flexible because you know what to expect from this API now. That's an interesting one, the password visibility toggle. So we wanted to add this functionality for end users to view their passwords. So thanks to Teresa for the idea. We've implemented this for the Apex builder and universal theme as of 24.2. So, I don't think I need to explain how this works. There's just a toggle next to the password field, and people can toggle and see the value. Next one is a very simple one for people who work with working copies. So with working copies, consider this setup where you have a main application 100 and a working copy application 101. If you get the app ID substitution string, or you want to see what the application ID for the current application, they would be respectively 100 and 101. That makes sense. But in those cases where you actually depend on the main app ID for, let's say, user credentials or authentication schemes or whatever you might have saved in your tables that are related to the main app, then you can now use this new substitution string to query the main application ID, which makes sense in the context of those main applications. Another interesting one is that we've improved the CSS minifier to support CSS nesting. So this is something that you might or might not have noticed, because CSS nesting is kind of new. But the way that we had CSS nesting to minify in our automatic file handling page was that it did not recognize this to be a new rule, so it could not minify, and then you would be stuck with a CSS file that would not work or would not reflect what you wrote in the unminified one. So we've removed our dependency to our old minifier. This is now completely baked into Apex, and we own the minifier for the CSS files. And you can now use those modern CSS functions such as minifying, such as nesting. Another one is the updated pop-up hello V attributes. So we've added new search options to make it consistent with combo box and select one mini. So thanks to John for this. Now, when you edit a pop-up hello V attribute, just head down to the search section, which is completely new, and it contains the match type. If you want to contains or start with, it can be case sensitive. You can specify how many minimum characters you want it to work with your pop-up LOV. So that's, again, consistent with other modern items. And now this reflects to how the pop-up LOV works. This is case sensitive. This one searches only for the match type is start with. So you can search Martin, but you cannot search TIN and that sort of thing. So I think this makes the pop-up LOV more usable and consistent with other items. And that's only a preview of what we've done for the Apex ideas in 24.2. As I said, there's 31 ideas in the list. I encourage you to go to the app, and there's a section for delivered ideas in Apex. And then you can pick the release and see what we've done in the past or the current release. Or you can also go to apexoracle.com/go/what's new 24.2. and click on this button for view ideas, and it gives you the full list of ideas that we're delivering. So thanks again to everybody who participated in the Ideas app. I cannot stress this enough. This is the best way to get your voice heard. We take this process very seriously, and we're not stopping. Thank you. Back to you, Jason.
Thank you so much, Vincent. Really appreciate the effort in putting all that together for everyone to learn more from. This has been the Delivered Apex Ideas segment of this episode of Apex 24.2 New Features Part 3. Thank you, Vincent, and thank you to everyone that has been on the call to participate, especially our panelists that have been answering the questions that have been coming through the Q&A. If you missed anything, don't worry. If you visit apex.oracle.com/office hours in the coming weeks, these sessions that were recorded will be posted. And beyond all that, we have on February 6th coming up Part 4, where we're going to have some of the participants talk about JSON sources, building components directly on JSON columns, JSON collection tables, or JSON relational duality views. So thank you to everyone for attending. It's always great to engage with everybody live, and we'll see you next time. Hope you have a great week. Bye, everyone.